between Canada and the European Union. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Rivière-des-Mille will have 5 minutes for questions and comments when the House resumes debate on this motion.
First, déclaration de député, l'honorable député.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, I've just come back from Marrakesh, where I had the honour of representing the Bloc Québécois at COP22. As in Paris, Canada made some good speeches. I saw the Minister of the Environment talk about Aboriginal leaders who are all concerned with the development of hydrocarbons. They all saluted these comments, but to underscore the fact that we needed to take action. I heard the Minister announce new targets, reduction targets, 80% by 2050. Why not 100? Why not 150? Why not pulling a number out of a hat? Because barely off the plane back home, what we hear is talk about Kinder Morgan, TransCanada, expanding the oil sands, billions of dollars in subsidies for fossil fuels. Unfortunately, once the curtain fell on the international conference, what we see is the mask comes off. We see action and no words.
Mr. Speaker, on October 16th, Ruth Spence, a long-term Northerner, volunteer and women's children's advocate and municipal politician, passed away just short of her 90th birthday. I was fortunate enough to have met Ruth Spence several times over the years and known of her lasting impact on the city of Yellowknife. Ruth was a tireless volunteer who was essential in setting up the Liberal Riding Association and was a constant force there for decades. She also opened up Yellowknife's YWCA and was their first executive director. It was an honour to have known Ms. Spence and to hear her advice. Our thoughts continue to be with their family as they mourn the passing of their mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Thank you.
The honourable member for Markham Unionville.
Mr. Speaker, every year the Armenian community of the GTA and Markham organize the Pomegranate Film Festival. This year was the festival's 11th year, which successfully showcased 35 outstanding Armenian-inspired films by international acclaimed actors and directors. I was honored to attend the premiere of 4-time Emmy Award-winning filmmaker Ward Moranian's documentary film, Woman of 1915. The film traces the plight of Armenian women during the genocide of 1915 and how Americans, Canadian, and Scandinavian women flocked the killing field and rescued thousands of Armenian women and children. The Pomegranate Film Festival is the result of 100% volunteer effort. I would like to congratulate the large group of very dedicated volunteers and the chair of committee, Mr. Savag Jogovanian, and also the Armenian community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During my stint in a small high-tech defense technology company in the manufacturing sector, I had witnessed the excellent federal government funding for innovation, research and development through programs such as the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Program, Industrial Research Assistant Program, and the Strategic Aerospace and Defense Initiative. But I also saw the lack of funding for manufacturing startups in general and for commercialization in particular. Mr. Speaker, Governor General David Johnston has said that Canada is the country of innovators and we need the culture of innovation. I say that innovation cycle will not be complete without commercialization. Mr. Speaker, while we have excellent support for innovation and R&D, we need to recognize the lack of support for commercialization. We need to take concrete and targeted steps to rectify this problem. Without commercialization, all the efforts we put into innovation will be in vain. We need to acknowledge this.
Honourable member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, recently I met with housing advocates to discuss recommendations for what must be included in a national housing strategy. Safe, affordable, and adequate housing can fight poverty and improve the quality of life for all Canadians. In its March budget, the federal government committed $253 million for new affordable and social housing, and provinces and territories were to match that. It would indeed be a wonderful National Housing Day present if these governments were to allocate and mobilize the funding they promised 8 months ago, even though it is but a quarter of what is needed each year to alleviate the affordable housing crisis. Canada needs a comprehensive, long-term, fully funded housing plan. We cannot achieve the vision of what we want to be when 13% of Canadians don't have adequate shelter and almost 20% of Indigenous peoples have substandard housing. A roof is a right. Let us celebrate National Housing Day by truly committing to put the needs of low-income and vulnerable Canadians first. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Pierrefonds-Dollard. Mr. Speaker, November 20th, we celebrated Universal Children's Day. It's an opportunity for us to promote the rights of children with a view to creating a better future for all children. In my riding of Pierrefonds-Dollard, we have many charitable organizations dedicated to the well-being of children.
These organizations support children with disabilities, integrate refugee children, and reach out to Aboriginal youth. For example, WIA is working to support children through the Kismet Center. This will be a place where young children will be given lifelong advantages provided by growing up within a caring community. It's our moral duty to support children both here in Canada and throughout the world. Mr. Speaker, it's an obligation we should all be very proud to fulfill.
Bravo.
The Honourable Member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberal government's putting our economy at even greater risk by making yet another arbitrary decision to save the world by shutting down Canada's coal-fired plants in an effort to rid the world of a little bit of carbon. Where's the cost-benefit analysis? Where are the consultations with provinces, stakeholders, and individual Canadians? The Liberals seem to have forgotten that in the first 5 months of 2016, China brought in 25 new coal-fired plants with plans for many more. When it comes to implementing trade agreements that increase the GDP, the Liberals hold up legislation with ongoing consultations. But a carbon tax, which will hurt Canadians' pocketbooks, they ram that through no matter the cost to our economy. What's another $130 billion in debt, Mr. Speaker? Our great-grandchildren can handle that. Australia's repealing their failed carbon tax experiment. France, the birthplace of the Paris Accord, refuses to implement a carbon tax, as will the United States under President-elect Trump. I stand with my Premier Brad Wall, who recognizes the destructive nature a carbon tax will have on the Canadian economy and how negatively it will impact Western Canada. When there's no more money for transfer payments to Eastern Canada, will the Liberals finally listen, Mr. Speaker?
Honourable Member for Don Valley East.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to advocate on behalf of National Initiative for Eating Disorders. NIED, as it is known, is a not-for-profit coalition of families whose loved ones suffer from eating disorders. They wish to bring about positive changes in the availability and quality of treatment for people with eating disorders. Eating disorders affects over 900,000 Canadians and is 12 times more likely to lead to death than any other mental illness, making it the most lethal and complex of all mental health disorders. Despite the significant number of sufferers, there is a severe lack of healthcare-covered treatment options. The NIED works hard to educate Canadians on the challenges and changes needed in the understanding and treatment of eating disorders in Canada. I thank them for their efforts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Député de Vimy.
The Honourable Member for Vimy. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy and proud to be here with you and to draw the attention of the House to the fact that today is Lebanese Independence Day, which marks the end of colonial rule in that country. Like inhabitants of other countries, today the people of Lebanon and proud expatriates of Lebanese origin across the world are celebrating their nation's sovereignty and autonomy. The Canada-Lebanon Parliamentary Friendship Group, which I have the honor of vice-chairing, organized for the first time ever a historic celebration. Together, we placed the Lebanese flag on Parliament Hill.
Proud Canadian from Lebanese origin, I hope all members in this House will join me in wishing all Lebanese across the world a happy 73rd Independence Day.
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, my riding of Chilliwack Hope is a piece of heaven on earth, but it also includes the highway through hell. The scenery through the Cascade Mountains and along the Coquihalla Highway is breathtaking. When the weather turns bad, though, this vital transportation link can quickly become one of the most treacherous major highways in the world. Hope BC's Jamie Davis and his heavy rescue crews regularly risk their lives to save stranded drivers and clear accident scenes in all conditions to keep the road open, because closure is not an option. With support from the Canada Media Fund, Thunderbird Entertainment created Highway Through Hell, which documents the round-the-clock struggle to keep these highways open. This hit show is now seen throughout Canada, the US, the UK, Norway, New Zealand, and France. It's a Canadian success story. Jamie Davis and one of the show's creators, Mark Miller, are here in Ottawa today. They will be at tonight's Canada Media Fund showcase at the Sir John A. Macdonald Building, and I invite all of my colleagues to come out and meet these true road warriors.
The honourable member for Parkdale High Park.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak about Tibetan leader Dr. Lobsang Sangay. His Holiness the Dalai Lama relinquished political leadership of the Tibetan community in 2011, and Dr. Sangay was the first person elected ever to the post of Sikyong, or government leader, that same year. Born in a Tibetan refugee settlement in India, Dr. Sangay is a Fulbright scholar and the first Tibetan to ever receive an SJD degree from Harvard. Thousands of Tibetans in my riding of Parkdale High Park and around the world see Dr. Sangay as a strong advocate for the middle way approach. The middle way seeks nothing more than greater autonomy for Tibet within China. It is an approach that would peacefully resolve the issue of Tibet and bring about stability and coexistence based on the concepts of equality and mutual cooperation. I salute Dr. Sangay, as well as Mr. Pempa Sering, the official representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for their important work in promoting awareness about the middle way approach. For their vital efforts, I say, Tashi Dele.
The honourable member for Hamilton West and Castor Dundas.
According to the Diabetes Association of Canada, 30% of people with diabetes suffer with depression, and they have 3 times higher rate of bipolar disorder. This week, we are joined on the Hill by members of the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation for Kids for a Cure Day. 25 kids living with type 1 diabetes are here, coming to Ottawa to explain how type 1 diabetes affects them and how research into the disease has changed lives. Mr. Speaker, type 1 diabetes is very important to me. My closest friend's son grew up with this disease. When I was a chaplain, I worked to raise money to fund research into the disease. Mr. Speaker, our government has improved the lives of many young Canadians by funding type 1 diabetes research, and we can do even more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Mr. Speaker, today is an important day on the world stage as Lebanon celebrates its 73rd anniversary of its independence. There are almost 200,000 Canadians like myself who have some sort of Lebanese ancestry. The first Lebanese immigrants arrived here in 1882, 134 years ago. We Lebanese are a proud people with strong roots and wandering spirit. We are to be found in every country of the earth, and whenever we go, we make a positive contribution. While we can often become citizens of other nations, forming deep attachments, yet we never forget our roots. We have our homes, but we also have our homeland. That's why we celebrate Lebanon's independence. We are immensely proud of our heritage. We work to maintain close ties to our homeland, while at the same time, we remain proud Canadians. Join with us as we celebrate. Thank you.
The honourable member for Tobique Mactaquac.
Mr. Speaker, a family from my community has demonstrated nothing shy of courage and fortitude since the heartbreaking loss of their daughter, Emma, who was taken from them in July of 2015 as a tragic result of an alcohol-related motor vehicle accident. Mr. Speaker, Emma was not only a light in the lives of her family, but to everyone she came in contact with, including my children, who speak of her often and fondly, remember the time that they shared with her at our home. She loved her comfy jammies, her onesies in particular. A year ago, her proud parents, Kim and Brent Pearson, started a campaign to honor Emma's memory. The mission is to spread the love they have for Emma around to others, one pair of pajamas at a time. Emma's pajamas are being sent to shelters for women and their children, volunteer family services, food banks, and hospitals in her memory. Moving into the holiday spirit, I invite you to #SpreadLoveAround. You can contribute by visiting Emma's PJ's second annual pajama drive on Facebook or donate locally in Emma's name. Who we are in the end and how we've touched the lives of others is the legacy we leave behind. Mr. Speaker, I believe Emma Pearson will be very proud of her legacy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable député de Sherbrooke.
The honourable member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, today I'd like to highlight the 34th edition of Candles for Peace, organized by Caritas Estrie. This campaign, organized by a not-for-profit organization in Sherbrooke, raises awareness in the region with a view to fighting poverty. The funds gathered will help Cercovie, the Scouts, Journal de Rue, La Maison Grands-Parents, Manchez Nous, ACF, and others. These organizations will then directly provide services to the community to help the most needy people in our region throughout the Eastern Townships and Sherbrooke. I'm proud, as the honorary president for the 2016 campaign, to rise in this House and to congratulate everyone who's working directly or indirectly on this campaign. I'd also like to invite everyone in my region to generously donate when they're asked to buy a candle for peace from Caritas Estrie.
Honourable member for Calgary Shepherd.
Last week, the Prime Minister traveled to South America, choosing to stop in Cuba but skipping on Venezuela. Venezuelan opposition leaders are unjustly imprisoned by the Chavista regime of Maduro that receives heavy support from the Castros and Cuba. Sky-high crime rates, vast corruption, chronic food shortages, and spiraling inflation have Venezuela on the verge of collapse. A beautiful country shattered by ruinous socialist economic policies and social engineering on a grand scale. The Prime Minister has shown zero interest in promoting international human rights. And that leaves us to wonder if he took the opportunity when meeting with the Cuban president to plead for the release of opposition leaders in Venezuela. The word democracy didn't pass his lips in any of his public comments while in Cuba. Neither was talk of multi-party elections or calls for Cuba to let up on its harassment of democracy activists and political opposition leaders. We will never know if this trip was about family nostalgia or a quid pro quo by Cuba for Canada's seat on the Security Council. This was a missed opportunity for Canada to speak up and be counted as a defender of international human rights.
The honourable member for Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, today is National Housing Day, and I'm proud to stand in this House and say for the first time in over a decade, we are poised to deliver a national housing strategy for safe and affordable housing for Canadians everywhere, especially those in need. In our government's first budget, we invested $2.3 billion more back into Canada's housing programs, sending a strong message that on housing, the federal government is back in the game and a force for better housing. For the last year, our government has been seeking input from stakeholders from across the country, and today we released that report detailing just what we heard. The report called Let's Talk Housing came from talking to people from every corner of this country, from people with lived experience on the streets and living in precarious housing, from the co-op movement, First Nations, municipalities, our provincial and territorial partners, and of course the builders of housing. The goal is not just to build housing, the goal is to build stronger neighborhoods, and through that, stronger communities, and with that, a stronger country. Let's get on with the job.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome the Prime Minister back to this House
Here, here.
for the first time since November 2nd. We all know that the Prime Minister likes...
Honourable member of the... Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition is aware that members do not draw attention to the presence or absence of other members in the House. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Again, I'd like to welcome the Prime Minister to the House. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the Prime Minister would rather hang out with billionaires than answer questions in Parliament. When he's not mingling with them in Sun Valley or Davos, he's hitting them up for Liberal Party donations back home. In May, in fact, Mr. Speaker, Chinese billionaires paid $1,500 for exclusive access to the Prime Minister at a Toronto mansion. Rubbing elbows with millionaires at these cash-for-access events does not pass the smell test, and the Prime Minister knows it. So why does he keep doing it?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians faced a period of 10 years of lower than needed growth under the previous government, and that's why we have committed to engaging positively with the world to draw in investment, and I'm pleased with the representations we've made in Davos and elsewhere to demonstrate that Canada is a good place to invest. Indeed, when we talk about investments like Bell Helicopter in Mirabel with 1,000 more jobs, the GM research in Markham, or the GE plant plant down in the Niagara region, we know that drawing in global investment is a great way to grow the economy and create jobs.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's not a coincidence that these billionaires the Prime Minister meets with actually want something from him. One of these guests at the Mansion in May wanted government approval for a new bank in Canada. So you pay $1,500 for exclusive access to the Prime Minister, and you get your final approval for your bank a few months later. Not only does this event break the Prime Minister's own ethics rules, it doesn't pass the smell test. He could stop this right away. Why doesn't he?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Canadians can be reassured that the federal level has some of the toughest rules and laws around political fundraising of any level of government in this country. And indeed, we have always followed those rules and indeed the principles that underlie it. We also find it peculiar that the opposition is trying to politicize that particular issue, since it was their finance minister who approved that bank before they were booted out of office.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Order.
Class act, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is making a political decision about what fighter jets to buy our pilots. Last time I checked, he's not an expert in fighter jets. He won't be flying them, and it won't be his life on the line. So instead of telling our fighter pilots what jets they're allowed to have, why doesn't he let them make the decision?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of completely botching the procurement process, I am pleased to announce today that we are going to be holding an open competition to replace Canada's aging fighter jet fleet. The fact is, the fact that they botched that procurement process means that we right now have a capability gap. We cannot fulfill our NORAD and NATO obligations. Canadians know we need to, and that's why we're moving ahead with an interim process to give Canadian forces the equipment that they deserve.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The only gap here is a credibility gap. A Prime Minister who doesn't even think that we should use our jets to bomb ISIS is not the person that should be making this decision for our pilots. Our Air Force deserves to have the best equipment, and they deserve to make the decision arm's length from any politician. So will he drop this plan and stop interfering in something he knows nothing about?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I find it the height of irony to get this from the members opposite, who demonstrated they had no clue how to get the replacements that our fighters, our Canadian fighter pilots need. The fact is, I will listen to experts. I will listen to the Chief of Defence Staff, who says we are facing a significant capability gap. We will fix and upgrade our fighters with an open competition. But in the meanwhile, we need an interim process to make sure that Canada can fulfill its obligations to protect our sovereignty and support our allies.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday a judge in Ontario struck down a mandatory 1-year prison sentence for a 50-year-old man who sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl. This judge thought that 1 year in jail was too much. Yet this Prime Minister is already planning to roll back mandatory jail time for all sorts of serious crimes. So can the Prime Minister guarantee Canadians the sexual assault crimes against children will still require mandatory jail time?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, instead of politicizing crime the way the members opposite have, I can confirm that we will always support our judiciary, who make responsible, reasonable decisions about the cases before them, and I don't think it should be something that should become a political football.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie.
Mr. Speaker, if you're a rich businessman, it seems that you can have access not only to the finance minister, but to the Prime Minister himself. In May this year, 30 billionaires paid $1,500 to gain a direct access to the Prime Minister during a Liberal fundraiser event. We also know that some of the attendees after that made a big donation to the Trudeau Foundation. Will they continue to hide behind the Conservatives' law, or will this Prime Minister start to respect and enforce his own rules?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians need to know that they can have confidence in the fact that we have some of the strongest rules around political financing in the country, and those rules are always followed. The fact of the matter is we need to demonstrate the level of transparency and accountability that we have always shown, and we will continue to.
The honourable member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. I don't know if you remember the ad, there are some things that money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. Well, get out your checkbooks, ladies and gentlemen, because it seems like the entire Liberal cabinet can be bought, including the Prime Minister. Last May, 30 powerful businessmen, billionaires and real estate promoters and bankers paid $1,500 to spend a private evening with the Prime Minister. I'd like to ask the Prime Minister today, what's his definition of a conflict of interest? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that we have some of the strictest rules in the country when it comes to political financing, and those rules are always followed. Individuals cannot give more than $1,500 per year to political parties, and that shows a level of trust in our system that other levels of government and other governments around the world don't have. Canadians can be proud of our system here in Canada.
Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, when asked yesterday why this government's still spending $500,000 fighting Cindy Blackstock and First Nations children in court, the government repeated talking points about how they welcomed the ruling from the Human Rights Tribunal. So I want to get the Minister of Justice on record on this issue. As the Attorney General of Canada, how can she justify not complying with this order of the Tribunal? And what does she have to say to Cindy Blackstock, who's back at the Tribunal today?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question. The fact of the matter is no government has done more to repair the relationship with Indigenous Canadians than this one. $8.4 billion over the next 5 years in building infrastructure and supporting young people and supporting Indigenous communities. The fact is we recognize there's much more to do, but we also have to recognize that that needs to be done in concert with the Indigenous communities themselves, with municipal, provincial partners, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Honourable member for Victoria.
Let's leave the talking points aside and talk about the facts. Since January, this government has received 2 non-compliance orders from the Human Rights Tribunal, and it has spent almost $500,000 in lawyers' fees to fight Cindy Blackstock. And this, Mr. Speaker, after voting in this House to recognize that they should end, once and for all, the legal battles against Indigenous children. How can the Minister of Justice justify this record, a record that's as bad as the Conservatives? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The reality is that we continue to work very hard to ensure that all children in this country have the same opportunities, and that means massive investments in Indigenous communities, and that we be able to help young people in Indigenous communities succeed. We still have a lot of work to do, but I'd like to note that with $8.4 billion invested in the coming years, we have started to do good work that was too long neglected by too many governments in this House. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Justice in Toronto, the Minister of Finance in the Maritimes, the Minister of Natural Resources, now the Prime Minister. They can't sign a softwood lumber agreement. If they were spending as much time on that instead of raising money, it would go a lot more quickly. Thousands of families depend on softwood lumber, but the Liberals are more concerned with raising money. Will they finally deal with this issue? The Honourable Minister of International Trade. Mr. Speaker, the softwood lumber agreement expired under the previous government. As the Prime Minister has said, we are impatient to work very closely with the new administration. I am continuing negotiations with Mike Foreman. We did that this last weekend, and the Prime Minister discussed it with President Obama. We continue to work closely with producers and workers in the provinces and territories. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, Our forces are very important for the Canadian people. We'll remember that the Liberals already left our forces in the desert with clothes for winter, and now they're doing something similar with the fighter jets. We're hearing two messages. They're saying we're going to buy some jets, but we're also going to have an open and transparent process. Transparency is harder to do than to say. So they have to look at many different factors, and we haven't heard of that. We need the best fighter for our jets, not something that will protect the Prime Minister. The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
That we will be launching an open competition to finally replace our fighter fleet, a file that has been mismanaged for the last 10 years. In addition, we are going to be investing in our military to making sure that we have an interim fleet that's going to fulfill this capability gap, Mr. Speaker. Our government is committing to investing in our Canadian Armed Forces, and that's exactly what we're doing.
The member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is at it again, another cash for access event, this time with Chinese billionaires. Not only has he broken his own ethical rules, but he has violated Liberal Party guidelines requiring officials to ban anyone from attending a fundraiser if they have direct business interests before the government. Will the Prime Minister finally show some leadership, enforce his own rules, and stop using his government position for his own personal benefit?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've said in this House many times, that we have some of the most strict and the strongest fundraising rules across this country. In fact, the Chief Electoral Officer recently stated that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Député de Lévis.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Well, Mr. Speaker, we've seen it all from this Liberal government. Conflicts of interest and appearance of conflicts of interest. And the Prime Minister is the most conflicted of all. $1 million from a billionaire Chinese donor for the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. No, really, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals have long since mastered breaking and getting around ethical rules. Do they want Canadians to live in a country where money buys the Prime Minister's attention? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the member is mixing the facts, and that's not something we should do today. And as the member knows, we have the strictest rules in the country here for political fundraising. The Chief Electoral Officer has clearly said that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced, transparent, and restrictive in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, we learned today that 32 people, including Chinese billionaires, paid $1,500 to meet the Prime Minister at yet another Cash for Access event. A billionaire real estate developer and bank founder, Ted Zhu, Jenny Key, an actress and real estate investor, the CEO of Gold Mount Capital International, and even a member of China's Communist Party attended this event. So over 80 exclusive Cash for Access events have been hosted by the Prime Minister and his cabinet, targeting wealthy stakeholders in the last year. Now, absolutely everyone can see the blatant conflicts of interest here. So why can't the Prime Minister?
The Honourable Leader of the Government House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unlike the previous government, Canadians have access to this government. This government committed to working with Canadians. We committed.
Order. Order. It's the opposition's responsibility to ask tough questions, but it's also the rules so we don't interrupt the answers. The Honourable. Order. Or else we could have a shortened question period. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I will say that our government has embarked on unprecedented levels of public consultation to make sure that this government is responding to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. And the member very well knows that we have some of the strictest fundraising rules in this country when it comes to fundraising. We will continue to follow the rules, and when you follow the rules, no conflicts of interest can exist. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister himself was the star attraction at this exclusive Cash for Access event with Chinese billionaires. Zhang Bin is a political advisor to the Chinese government, and after attending the event, he and his partner, Mr. Gen Sheng, donated $1 million to the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation, including $50,000 to build a statue of the former Prime Minister. Now, we know the Prime Minister's love for the Chinese dictatorship, so what exactly did he promise the Chinese for their $1 million donation?
Government House Leader.
This government is working for Canadians. This government has lowered taxes on middle-class Canadians. This government has given more money to families with children that need it the most, tax-free Canada Child Benefit. This government will continue to work with Canadians. This government will continue to raise the bar on openness and transparency, and we are here to help grow the economy and grow the opportunities that Canadians need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are ramming through CETA while ignoring the fact that it will lead to higher drug costs in Canada. Health Canada has admitted this, but the Trade Minister continues to deny the basic facts. Canadians could be on the hook for an increase of $1.6 billion a year. That's a 13% increase. I know folks in my riding of Essex are already struggling to cover the cost of expensive prescriptions. Is the minister not at all concerned that Canadians will be forced to pay more for prescription drugs?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I've been very pleased to work with my counterparts in the provinces and territories to address the cost of prescription drugs. We have worked together on a pan-Canadian pharmaceutical alliance that is allowing us to save upwards of $1 billion a year in order to do bulk purchasing. In addition to that, I'm working with my colleagues to address the regulations associated with the Patented Medicines Prices Review Board in order to make sure that the cost of prescription drugs is affordable and Canadians will have the medications they need.
The honourable member for Berthier-Maskinongé. Mr. Speaker, yesterday in the House, the Minister of Agriculture said that he was really proud of the transition plan for dairy producers because producers in Ontario are happy with it. But what about the producers in Quebec, Mr. Speaker? They will suffer the most under the CETA agreement. And if we look at what producers in Quebec are saying, the Liberal transition plan is completely out to lunch. But where are the Liberal MPs? Where is their Quebec caucus? We don't hear anything from them on this issue. They're not defending dairy producers and supply management. Are they proud of his minister when he says ridiculous things like that?
Chair of Agriculture.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
My honourable colleague's question. And as my honourable colleague is well aware, I have met dairy farmers and dairy processors across the country for the last 10 months. You have to listen. And the truth is the program that is put in place was put in place by what we heard across the country. And in Quebec, young dairy farmers are interested in the future of the dairy industry. This government has committed to supply management, and this government will make sure supply management lasts for generations.
The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are pursuing their plan to sole source the F-18 Super Hornet. They told Canadians during the campaign they could buy the F-18 for $65 million per plane, but Kuwait just bought 40 of them last week for $335 million apiece. This is a waste of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money and is sticking our Air Force with the wrong plane. Why is the Defence Minister taking 5 years to hold a competition and punting it down the road till after the next election?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the member opposite asked us to launch an open competition. And today, I'm very proud, we have launched the competition. We'll be doing it. We'll be launching this competition once the defense policy review is complete, and we'll start the process forward. In the interim, because of the capability gap, because of the 10 years of neglect on this file, we are investing in our Canadian Armed Forces to making sure we can fill this gap, to making sure that we have the right equipment for our Canadian Armed Forces.
Member for Selkirk Interlake
Mr.
East.
Speaker, the Liberals are propagating the greatest hoax in Canadian defence procurement history. There is no capability gap. Defence Research and Development Canada said we only need 65 jets to meet our NORAD and NATO commitments. The Commander of the Air Force said our CF-18s could fly until 2025. And yesterday, officials from the Department of National Defence confirmed that all 77 CF-18s can be flown right until 2025. Now, will the Defence Minister listen to his officials, or is he going to keep doubling down on the Liberal credibility gap?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, right now, we cannot meet our NORAD and NATO commitments simultaneously. I have taken the advice from our Chief of Defence Staff. We have a capability gap, and the previous government policy was to risk manage that. Our government's policy is not to risk manage it. We're going to be investing in this. We're going to make sure we have a permanent fleet replaced with an open and transparent competition, and we're going to have an interim fleet to be able to fulfill this capability gap as well, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, the Joint Strike Fighter program has generated hundreds of millions of dollars in investments for Canada's aerospace industry. It's created thousands of jobs in BC, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick. The government says that it's going to hold an open and transparent process after having given a sole source contract to the Super Hornets. So that's not a very credible approach. Why are they buying the CF-18 Super Hornets now when the capacity gap is an invented concept?
Mr. Speaker, we will be replacing the entire fleet with an open and transparent competition once the process starts after defense policy review. There is a capability gap, and we will be buying an interim fleet, and we will be staying as part of the Joint Strike Fighter program as well, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou.
The competition for 5 years, bringing the decision after the election. All Canadians know that that's a joke.
Yep.
Mr. Speaker, le Général Hood ainsi que le chef d'état-major de...
The Auditor General, the Chief of the Defence Staff, and General Hood have all confirmed that there's not a capability gap and that our current fighters will fly until 2025, Mr. Speaker. Why is this government refusing to hold an open, transparent process now to get the best contract for the Canadian forces and to ensure good jobs now, today, tomorrow for Canada?
Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, the previous government couldn't get this done in the last 10 years, and they should have had it done. We should not be flying aircraft that are 30 years old. These aircraft should have been replaced a long time ago. We will be launching an open and transparent competition once the defense review is complete. We will be replacing them in we'll be putting in an interim capability as well for this gap, because we're going to be investing into our Canadian Armed Forces to making sure they have the right tools to fulfill their missions.
Most members are able to get through question period without reacting to what they hear. In all parties, I encourage the member for Durham to do the same, and others.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-Les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, the Harper Conservatives never dared go so far. The Liberals want to privatize airports and have hired Crédit Suisse, which is in the business of buying up infrastructure, to advise them. They also want to privatize ports and have hired Morgan Stanley, who are in the same business, to advise them. I think we can guess what their advice will be, and key infrastructure for economic development will be at the mercy of the private sector. Where in the Liberal platform was there any mention of privatizing ports and airports? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, we've made no decision about ports and airports. I guarantee that all decisions we do take in the future on airports will be in the interest of travelers. That's our priority. And when it comes to ports, it will be in the interest of the Canadian economy. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Churchill.
Speaker, the Made on Bay Street infrastructure privatization plan, while good for billionaire investors, is selling out Canadian jobs. The Port of Churchill is a devastating example of what happened the last time the Liberals privatized strategic infrastructure. They virtually gave the port away to an American billionaire who has since shut it down. People have lost their jobs, the community's future is in question, and we're all paying the price. So when will the Liberals stand up for jobs and stop selling us out for private infrastructure's gain?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you a happy birthday before I respond to that question.
Enough to get order in here. Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Economic Development. Order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I hope that doesn't go against my time allocation. But I do want to take this opportunity again to highlight the very important initiative that we put in place with regards to Churchill. We recognize the challenges there, and that is why our government, through economic development, invested $4.6 million to create jobs to help the community before year-end, Mr. Speaker. We are concerned about economic development, we care about jobs, and we're making investments in growing the economy.
The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is one of the world's largest pork exporters and represents 20% of the world pork trade. Maintaining and opening up new markets to pork is critical to Canadians' hog industry, which drives economic growth in many rural regions across the country. Can the Minister of Agriculture update us on what our government is doing for the Canadian pork industry? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate my honourable colleague's question and concern. Our government is firmly committed to the pork producers, and we secured repeal of the country of origin labelling and have signed CETA, which will provide additional $400 million in pork exports. Last week, the Prime Minister made great progress in allowing the export of our pork to Argentina, which will provide even greater benefits for our pork producers. Our government is committed to working hard to provide economic benefits for all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Battlefords, Lloydminster.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the real advantage for pork's in the TPP. Yesterday, the President-elect stated that the U.S. will withdraw from TPP on his first day in office. In Canada, we have a Liberal government that doesn't know what to do about the TPP after their first year in office. The Trade Minister loves to espouse the pro-trade mantra, but her actions don't quite match up. Why won't this Liberal government get beyond consultation and move toward liberalizing trade in the Asia-Pacific with the remaining allies?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I think our pro-trade credentials are amply demonstrated by the fact that we got CETA signed, something the previous government... When it comes to the TPP, I welcome this opportunity to educate the member opposite about the technical details of an agreement his own government negotiated. That agreement, as negotiated by the members opposite, stipulates that the TPP can only come into force if it is ratified by the United States. Even if all 11 other countries ratify, there is no TPP.
Member for Battlefords, Lloydminster.
Well, that's absolutely false, Mr. Speaker. With the U.S. folding on TPP, since the Liberals won't ante up to fill the void, countries like China and Russia will step in. Japan and New Zealand will ratify the deal this year. Australia and Mexico not far behind. They're going to go it alone without the U.S. Why aren't we part of that? The Trade Minister also claims that TPP countries have 2 years. That's no longer the case, Mr. Speaker. Everything's been moved forward now with the U.S. withdrawal. So when will she finally do her job to promote the TPP and actually implement this vitally important agreement?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I don't like embarrassing the member opposite, but the technical details of the TPP are that this agreement can only come into force if it is ratified by 6 countries, which cover 85% of the GDP of the TPP countries. In practice, that means it must be ratified by the United States to come into force. Even if all other 11 ratify, there is no TPP.
Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, it's clearly evident that the Liberals' trade agenda is an absolute chaos. There's no softwood lumber agreement, there's no TPP, and they've even undermined the protection of Canadian investors under our free trade agreement with the European Union. The Liberal government doesn't even understand the damage it will cause to Canada's economy by imposing a massive carbon tax and increasing the price of electricity across Canada. Why won't the Liberals champion trade, stand up for Canadian workers and businesses, and grow our economy?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
personal respect and even great fondness for the member opposite. But I have to say that we have delivered on trade time after time where his government failed. We got the TPP signed. We got the discriminatory, cruel measures removed. We secured access to Mexico and China for Canadian beef, and something I am personally proud of as a farmer's daughter, we got our canola sales to China done.
The member for Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, those were all our Conservative accomplishments. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on about how the Liberals are failing Canadian families and workers. Why have they opened up a discussion with the United States on country of origin labeling when Canada recently won its case at the World Trade Organization? Why did the Prime Minister break his promise to solve the softwood lumber dispute within 100 days of his meeting with President Obama? Remember that promise? Do the Liberals not realize how many jobs across Canada and in my home province of BC they have put at risk?
Yes, right. Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, let me first clarify a misstatement by the member opposite. We have in no way opened up the coal issue, and in fact, I'd like to remind everyone that our right to retaliate on coal as granted to us by the WTO remains in place, and we are ready to use that right. When it comes to jobs, we have done a tremendous job of getting investments into Canada. Thomson Reuters, up to 1,500 jobs. GE, 200 jobs. The list goes...
The honourable member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, today is National Housing Day. In his summary of consultations on shaping a housing strategy released this morning, the minister mentions the possibility of renewing expiring operational agreements with existing operators, but no word on agreements that have already expired. By the time the strategy is revealed in 2017, over 100,000 households will have lost their rent subsidy and may have to pay $200 to $400 more every month for housing. Does the minister also plan to renew funding for agreements that have already expired? The honourable minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for giving me this opportunity to say how fortunate I felt in recent months to take part in the consultation process, which produced thousands of exchanges between stakeholders and the government. And communities have been waiting for some leadership and commitment from the federal government for years when it comes to helping families in need with their housing problems.
It's clear the Liberals' promise of an open competition to replace the CF-18s wasn't worth the paper it was written on. Instead, they're using the same approach as the Conservatives with the F-35s, this time hand-picking the Super Hornets without an open competition. Same approach, different jet. Everyone knows sole sourcing is the best way to get the worst price for taxpayers. Once again, the Liberals are breaking another major campaign promise. Does the minister really believe there can be an open competition 5 years from now after sole sourcing nearly a third of the fleet?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I should make sure that the member opposite understand how the process is going to work. After the defense policy review, defense policy is released, the process will begin for the permanent replacement of our fleet. In the interim, because of the capability gap, because we need to invest into our Canadian Armed Forces, we will be purchasing an interim fleet of 18 fighters to fulfill this gap. I personally feel that investing into our Canadian Armed Forces is the right thing to do, and that's exactly what our government promised to do, and that's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As of this month, 88% of BC First Nations had filed financial disclosure because they recognize that empowering their members is the right thing to do, and that means giving them access to information. Since the Liberals stopped enforcing the Act, many more are falling very far behind in their filings, including Semiahmoo, Popgun, and Skatine. How can the minister defend her disregard for grassroots members, and why will she not start empowering community members and enforce the law?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, once again, I remind the member that the Kelowna Court's collaborative approach led to a framework for accountability which that party's members tore up. Transparency and accountability will only be improved by working in true partnership with First Nation. What the member fails to understand is that top-down approaches don't work, and frankly, since her law was put in place, more First Nations on principle objected to reporting. This is not working, and therefore we have to work together to empower those community members she's talking about to be able to be.
Honourable Member for Kamloops, Thompson Caribou.
If empowering First Nations is like S3, where they didn't even bother to talk to the chief and defendant, that is a very, very poor example. Band members are having to take their leadership to court to get basic financial information. On this side of the House, we're with people like Charmaine Stick, who the minister is forcing her to go to court for this information. They should be ashamed. Why is the minister forcing Charmaine to go to court instead of showing some leadership and enforcing the law?
Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I think that the member fails to understand that there are certain things that are within the purview of my department in terms of Indigenous affairs. There are other things that are actually own source revenues of the band. What that community member is going to court to find is things that we cannot, as a department, determine, because it is not our money, it is the band's money, and therefore the member needs to go through the regular process to be able to get that information.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the problem is every time the Liberals have a chance to empower grassroots First Nations people, they do the opposite and give a pass to some unaccountable, all-powerful chiefs. Liberals oppose guaranteeing women on reserves the right to their own home after a divorce. Why? Because some chiefs didn't like it. Right. And now, because some chiefs don't like it, they are blocking the ability of First Nations people to hold their leaders to account on what they spend. Why are the Liberals more focused on protecting the chiefs than empowering First Nations grassroots people?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we take all allegations of fraud very seriously, but in the particular situation that the member raises, the audit was stopped in July of 2015 when the department sought a legal opinion on the jurisdiction matter. Just as I've explained, it was determined the department does not have jurisdiction to investigate this matter, and as a result, the audit was not completed and there is no report. In accordance with the department's usual practice, all complainants were informed of this outcome.
The Honourable Member for Laval-les-Îles. Mr. Speaker, today is a special day. It's National Housing Day. This is a good opportunity to talk about the excellent work our government is doing to provide Canadians with better access to affordable housing. Can the Minister tell the House about how Canada's national housing strategy is shaping up? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague from Laval-les-Îles for his excellent work supporting affordable housing in his riding. Canadians need suitable, affordable housing. Budget 2016 invested $2.3 billion over 2 years in affordable housing, which will benefit 200,000 families. The National Housing Strategy will be launched in 2017, and it will provide stable, foreseeable funding through partnerships with all of our communities.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Justice has said that she has a problem with mandatory jail sentences passed by the previous Conservative government. The previous Conservative government passed mandatory jail sentences for child sexual predators. In light of the Prime Minister's defense of the disturbing decision of an Ontario Superior Court judge to throw a mandatory jail sentence involving sexual interference involving a minor, will the Minister of Justice stand in her place and assure Canadians that the government will not repeal mandatory jail sentences?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and certainly recognize the question and
Without a doubt, child sexual assault is wrong, and our government is doing everything we can to ensure that we protect children. As I have stated many times, and as this House knows, I am conducting a broad review of the criminal justice system, including sentencing reform, including looking at an examination, a comprehensive examination of mandatory minimum penalties. Our government believes that it's important to have all of our laws be effective, meet public safety, and ensure that they're consistent with the Constitution of this country.
The Honourable Member for Laurier St. Marie. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the arrests of professors, students, journalists, and government officials, the Turkish government has arrested several Kurdish members of the National Parliament, democratically elected members. It's a direct attack on human rights and democracy. That's an attack that I certainly hope concerns all of us here in the House very deeply. So what specific steps has the minister taken to condemn the situation and to defend democracy and human rights in Turkey? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her questions and ensure her that her concerns are shared by all members of the House and myself. I have repeatedly raised this with my Turkish counterpart, and again recently. We want those who resisted the coup d'etat in Turkey to be protected appropriately, and we have serious concerns about the behavior of the Turkish government these days.
Mr. Speaker, the province of Nova Scotia has been a leader in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and they are deeply committed to a cleaner environment for future generations. The Minister of Environment and Climate Change has been working very hard with all provinces and territories to make sure that we hit our ambitious targets for reducing GHG emissions. Can the Minister update this House on her support for provinces like Nova Scotia in their fight against climate change?
Minister.
I'd like to thank the member for Dartmouth Cole Harbour for his excellent question. Yesterday, I was very pleased to join the Premier of Nova Scotia and the President of the Treasury Board to announce that Nova Scotia will implement a cap-and-trade system that aligns with Canada's approach to pricing carbon pollution. We applaud the leadership of Nova Scotia in tackling climate change and growing a clean economy. We look forward to continuing to work with all provinces and territories so that we together can create a more prosperous and sustainable future for our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, this morning ranchers from southern Alberta were at the Agriculture Committee to talk about bovine tuberculosis. Lives and livelihoods are being destroyed. They need help. They need funding to cover the additional feed costs caused by the CFIA's mandatory quarantine. They need the CFIA to use local vets to speed up testing. They need the CFIA Response Centre to openly and directly involve producers. But this morning, Liberals stopped us from calling the CFIA to committee. What are the Liberals afraid of? Why are they failing to address these issues?
Why? The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate my honourable colleague's concern. I have asked my department to look into options providing assistance to ranchers who are under quarantine. And I have asked CFIA to expedite payments to affected herds where cattle have to be destroyed. We have to ensure that we have also ensured that CFIA has brought an additional staff to support investigation, including on-farm testing. But we have to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that we eradicate this disease. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, a Liberal crony is a Liberal crony. A $1,500 a head fundraiser with the Prime Minister put on for Chinese bankers, and another with the Finance Minister for the hoi polloi of Bay Street. It's the lifestyles of the rich and famous. And then they wonder why people are so cynical. But we all know what the solution is. Restore public funding for political parties based on the number of votes they get, and lower the limit on contributions to political parties. What are the Liberals waiting for? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, as the member knows, and I've said a number of times, we have rules governing fundraisers. Those rules are amongst the most stringent in the country. The chief electoral officer said that Canada's political financing rules are among the most strict and transparent in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's ethical. Exclusive access to ministers for Liberal cronies at $1,500 a pop may be legal, but it isn't ethical. It's cynical. A cocktail party with the Prime Minister for Chinese investors who are interested in lobbying may be legal, but it certainly isn't ethical. It's cynical. Instead of encouraging cynicism among voters, will the minister responsible for democratic institutions restore funding for political parties based on votes cast? Yes or no? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, a number of people want to answer that because this government works for Canadians. We're proud of the work we're doing. We have launched an unprecedented number of public consultations to make sure that we're meeting the actual challenges facing Canadians. That's why we've taken steps like increasing taxes for the richest 1% and lower taxes for the middle class. We are doing what Canadians wanted us to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
To draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Bob McLeod, Premier of the Northwest Territories and Minister of Aboriginal Affairs and Intergovernmental Relations, and the members of the Cabinet of the Northwest Territories. This will conclude question period for today. Order. Order. I encourage members to carry on their conversations in the lobbies or elsewhere. Order. Let's try this. If you can hear my voice, say shh. Thank you. I am now prepared to rule on the question of privilege raised on November 3rd, 2016 by the member for Essex regarding the tabling of treaties in Parliament. Je remercie le député d'Essex.
I would like to thank the member for Essex for having raised the question, as well as the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons and the Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons for their comments.
Raising the question of privilege, the member for Essex contended that the government violated its own 2008 policy on the tabling of treaties in Parliament when, on Monday, October 31, 2016, the Minister of International Trade tabled in the House of Commons a copy of the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement between Canada and the European Union and its member states without an explanatory memorandum, and immediately after introduced the implementing legislation for that treaty, Bill C-30. an act to implement the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement between Canada and the European Union.